One of the more fascinating films I've been on was a film called Willow. Willow is a fantasy film that was conceived by the famous producer George Lucas. Many years before he filmed it, he was thinking about it, and it's a complete fantasy playing in some unknown century, probably 15th, 16th, 17th century. He cast a young man, only 17 at the time, called Warwick Davis, who now, of course, is a well-known television personality and film personality. He's been in all the Star Wars films, and he's hosted a number of television shows, so he's well known now. But at the time, he had very, very little experience, and was quite an accolade for him to become the star of a show. And he was playing the role of a poor farmer with a wife and a child. But his hobby was magic, so of course he had to learn some magic. And they asked me to teach him the magic that he needed for the film. Well, I was delighted, as always, to work on any film, and this one was a particularly interesting one. Most of the rehearsals took place at Elstree Studios, which I knew well from the television days. And then they built a little village in what seemed to be a forest. Actually, it was a place called Brocket Hall in Hertfordshire. And right in the middle of the grounds, they built this village with huts and marketplaces and stores and so on, but was populated by little people. And believe it or not, George Lucas and the director, Ron Howard, again a very famous director, you may remember him from Happy Days as an actor.
2 first-class tickets to Tinseltown.
Oh, first class, Fonz. I can't afford first class.
Of course you can. I got them from Yolanda down at the travel agency. One more date, you're going to Europe.
But by now, he had produced many films, and they managed to find 250 little people from around the world. You can't imagine it. Some of them didn't speak English, some were very bad-tempered, some were lovely and good-tempered, and to get them all together was quite an occasion. And it was quite an accolade for Warwick to be asked to be the star of this film. So I had to teach him quite a number of tricks. For instance, at one time he's being chased by some horrible-looking trolls. There's a whole horde of them chasing through some caves. There's a little walkway that has to get across, and it looks like they're just going to catch him up, when he suddenly remembers his magic, and he turned around, showed his hands empty, produces a flower in one hand, puts it in the other hand, throws it away, and another flower appears, and so on. And these trolls just suddenly stop, fascinated, and watch this magic, and whilst they're distracted like that, he manages to get away. Well, I've got some photos that I can show you now where these things happen. This is a rehearsal shot, of course, where I'm just showing him how to palm things. That means holding it, hiding it behind your hand so that the audience can't see it. And in this shot, he's producing the flowers. You can just see the 2 flowers in either hand there. Then I had to teach him another trick with the well-known linking rings that magicians produce. Now remember, it was a period piece, so we can't use chrome-plated rings, so I had to find a way of colouring them, and it didn't look right with wooden rings or plastic rings, so I used the original metal rings but covered them with colourful hessian. And there he's holding the 3 rings, with me looking quite satisfied that he's getting on well. And then I have a photo of him actually on the set. This is in front of the villagers. There you can see he's holding 6 rings all linked together in different patterns. And this is actually part of the show where he's performing to entertain the villagers.
I will now join them before your very eyes.
finishes with a long string of 6 or 7 rings all linked together, and he gets a lot of applause. But then he did another trick where he had to vanish a little piglet, a live piglet, and I showed him how to do that. But in the film, in the script, it says that he's an amateur magician and he's not very good. So he covers the piglet with a cloth, and when he whips it away, it has vanished, but the audience can see that it's dropped down by his feet, it's squeaking and running away, and they all laugh, and quite sarcastically, and he gets a bit embarrassed. But he keeps practicing that trick, and it's a very important part of the film. A baby that he's looking after gets captured by a wicked witch, and she is in a turret which is open to the elements, and it's raining and there's a howling wind, and she's got the baby in a metal trap, and she shows her hands and produces a sharp-looking dagger, which I had to invent a way of her doing that, and then she's just about to kill the baby, which is pretty horrific. But Warwick turns up and says, I can save the baby, and she says, no you can't, my powers are greater than yours. But then he does the Piglet Trick. He picks up the baby, covers it with a cloth, throws open the cloth, and sure enough it's gone, and this time it works. Now we come into the shot where Ron Howard asked me to show him how I propose Warwick to vanish the baby, and I said, well, first of all, he'll be holding the baby like this, and we show the actual baby wrapped in a blanket, and I'm holding it just to show him. He says, what I want you to do is to throw it up in the air, and the baby disappears. So I said, all right, I found a method of doing it, so I'm holding the baby at arm's length. He said, but throw it up. And of course, he didn't expect me to really perform the trick. So on this next photograph, I've actually thrown it up, and the baby's gone. And he wasn't expecting that because it was a rehearsal shot. So he and the crew were really surprised and started looking around to see where the baby gone. They didn't find it. He said, well, I don't know how he did that, but that's perfect. Can you teach that to Warwick? Which I did. And here's a shot of Warwick holding the baby in a similar fashion, and then he throws that up, and the baby is gone. You can see he's just preparing to throw it up. I'm just about to step out of the shot because we're now going to shoot the actual action for the film. The other thing that I mentioned was that I had to find a way of producing a dagger out of nowhere for the witch. Well, here is a shot of me teaching her. She holds her hand out like that and produces a dagger. Well, I had to invent a way of clipping it to the back of the fingers, and it went all the way down her arm. So when she was like that, you couldn't see it, but as she reached up into the air, the dagger appeared. I did query why they didn't do it by a camera shot, just a cut, but they didn't want that. They wanted it to look more fluid. That, of course, George Lucas is a perfectionist, and he really wanted as much of my kind of magic that he could fit in the film. And this is a shot of her trying to hold the clip, in fact, doing it very well. She soon learnt it, and as I said, it just appeared out of nowhere at the right moment. Most of the shots that I was involved in happened in that little village at Brocket Hall. They then went on to film in Wales, and finally they needed some snowy scenes and wild scenes. They travelled all the way to New Zealand. I was involved in the film for quite a few months, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
You got a little action, you got a little adventure, you got a little magic, you got a couple of chuckles.